Welcome to Journey to Esquire, the podcast. I'm Jocelyn Hardrick, founder and president of Diversity Access Pipeline, Inc., the company behind this podcast and other great programs, like Journey to Esquire Scholarship and Leadership Program, which provides $2,000 cash scholarships to third-year law students and internships to second-year law students, along with leadership training and mentors. And Journey to Esquire, the blog, which provides insightful articles to help navigate you through law school and beyond. Find out more on our website, www.journeytoesquire.com.
Welcome everyone to Journey to Esquire podcast. I am your host for today, Abigail Dean, and today we have a special guest. Her name is Devan Hardaway. I've had the privilege of working with Devan when I was working at the 13th Judicial Circuit office here located in Tampa, Florida. And her current position there is that she works as an assistant state attorney within the juvenile section. And today, we're going to be passing the mic to her to talk about her journey to Esquire. Welcome, Devan. How are you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good.
Very nice to be here.
Thank you so much for coming. But I want to go back to the beginning of your journey and talk about why is it that you decided to become an attorney?
I decided to become an attorney when I was an undergrad after a conversation with one of my professors. I was changing my major from pre-med to pre-law. And I was like, I guess I went all in because I changed from being a bioscience major to being an English political science major. And so, I changed my major. Then I was like, well, what am I going to do with all this stuff? And then one of my professors who had gone to Princeton was like, oh, you can go to law school. And I was like, really? But I took them out on, up on their offer to get some more information from them. And then eventually it kind of became one of those realities oh, maybe I really could do this. And then that started the journey. And
where did you go for undergraduate and law school?
For undergrad, I went to Fort Valley State University. That's in Fort Valley, Georgia. And then for law school, I went to Western Michigan University, Thomas M. Cooley Law School.
So in terms of, so you get your degrees in undergrad. Can you describe your law school application process and your process in choosing Cooley as your law school?
Okay. I like to say I took the LSAT like most people going to law school do. My university did a program where we could do the bar prep, or not bar prep, but the test prep for LSAT, MCAT, GRE for free. So they gave it to us for free. So I, of course, took them up on that offer and then basically studied and then took the LSAT, then started to apply at different schools because I was in Georgia and my family's in Georgia. I was trying to stay in Georgia originally, and then I was like, well, I could apply to a few other schools. So I just started randomly. I picked 3 random schools to apply to. I didn't look them up or anything. One was in North Carolina, one was in Florida, and I want to say the other one outside was Michigan. Then I applied, and that was it. Then, funny story, I got into 2 law schools, but I wasn't ready to go. So what I was doing was I was basically hiding my acceptance letters and then letting them lapse, I guess. And so my sister came home to visit, and I got a letter from Cooley or Western Michigan, and my oldest sister and brother-in-law actually went to Western Michigan, and then my middle sister, who's the one who checked my mail, she had a friend who actually went to law school at Cooley. And so they were like, you got into law school. And I was like, oh, okay. And then that's when I kind of had to spill the beans about all the other stuff. And then we had like family meeting, and it was like, okay, keep going.
So by the time you went to Cooley, did you didn't want to go to law school at that point?
Yeah. So I always wanted to go. It was one of those things like, well, do I want to go now? So I worked for a year and a half. I actually like work. So I didn't want to leave my job. It was actually a really good job. I worked at Athletics. It was basically like a graduation present at the headquarters where my hometown is. And I loved it. Loved every minute of working there. So I was in a position where I was still helping people, but I was making money and, didn't really have bills and stuff like that. So it was nice. And then I was like, oh, I gotta move.
Yeah.
And so, what?
So okay, so you moved all the way down to Florida. And that's something that you were concerned about?
I wouldn't say concerned. It was one of those things like, I didn't think about it until I was already down here, where it's like, oh wait, your whole family is in one state, you're moving by yourself to another one. So it was a little interesting, but I kind of liked it because eventually, once I got the hang of things, I was able to basically prove to myself that I was able to do stuff by myself and on my own without having, people that know me or people that know my parents or my siblings do things for me.
Yeah. It sounds like it was a growing experience for you.
It was. And I liked it. I ended up liking it. Yeah. It turned out to be a good, honestly, I think I'll say it turned out to be one of the best things that I decided to do on a whim, I guess you could say.
That is interesting. Because law school is one of those things that a lot of people, their journey is that they plan ahead. From young, I want to be an attorney, and so I planned ahead. But for you, it's just like, I'm gonna go. I'm gonna just try this thing out.
No, it's funny, like saying it out loud when I think, like thinking back over it. It's funny because we drove down here to visit the school without like making an appointment. We just randomly visited the school, and I had like an amazing tour. And I got to see, I guess it wasn't like all the put together stuff. So it made my parents feel comfortable. And we got to ask a lot of questions and things like that. And then I had nowhere to live. But that same day we found somewhere for me to live. It was everything just kind of fell into place.
Yeah.
So it was like one of those situations where I was like, okay, well, clearly I'm supposed to be here.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you get to law school. What do you enjoy most about the law school and that whole journey?
Wow. I'm not going to lie. I enjoyed law school as a whole, even what I call lockdown period. So when I studied for finals, because I didn't know how to study, I had to figure it out. Everybody that goes to law school is either the smartest person in their last class or one of the smart people. So you kind of don't really have to study. And so when you go to law school, everybody's on the same page. You're all the same person. True. So you just got to figure out how it works. And so I think what I enjoyed most about law school, academic-wise, I guess, is studying for finals. I would do a 3-week lockdown because our library would be open from 8 a.m. to 2 a.m. And so it would be groups of us. We would study separately, come together to take breaks, but really would be reviewing items and then go back separately. And we would do that some people would do 2 weeks. I would do 3 based on what my class load was like and if I had my internships and stuff. And it just worked. It helped me. It was a way where I had to figure it out because it's nobody can really teach you how to study at that point. It's well, you made it this far. You just gonna have to make it work. And so between figuring it out, my second term, my first term, it was pretty much I didn't study we went in there, and I was basically like, all right, God, if I'm supposed to be here, we're going to figure it out next term. But for right now, we gotta just not be on academic probation. And it worked. And so, and from that moment on, then I realized that when I was most successful in undergrad and even in high school, my schedule was always packed. Mm-hmm. So in law school, they tell you not to work.
Yeah,
I'm the opposite. When I had all the time in the world to study or all the time in the world to do other things, it was like, okay, I'll do it later. It like increased my procrastination, and my distraction was all over the place. But when I added in, I had an internship, I had a job, and then I just had a couple of volunteer things that I would do. When I added all that in, I had no choice but to schedule it. So scheduling it made me more, I was used to that type of life, so I had to get myself back used to that, and then that's when everything kind of like took off.
Wow, that is interesting. Interesting that you love the law school exams part.
I mean, there's fun parts about law school. You know, you have like the barrister's ball, the SBA, you have the balsa, and all. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things to like about law school, but the actual like learning part, I thoroughly enjoyed going to class.
Yeah. So after the process of law school, let's talk about the bar exam for a sec. Can you talk about your bar exam journey up to, and how you were able to, and also the process of taking the bar exam and up to leading up to your first job?
All right. I hope you got some time. So, my bar exam journey, or if that's what we're going to call it, yeah, we'll call it that. It started in 2018. Yeah, July 2018, after I graduated from law school. Everybody does the basic, like, bar prep. You get a commercial bar prep, and then you just follow the one-size-fits-all routine. And you go to the exam, and the chips will fall where they may. Or at least that's what they make it seem like. I'm not gonna lie, my first experience with the bar exam was kind of traumatic. I tend to be one of those people that puts unnecessary pressure on myself. And when you have a list of items that like you check off the boxes and stuff, you put the pressure on yourself to not only check off the boxes, but then you start looking at percentages and whatnot. I think the being so sucked into studying all the time, we had a couple of trips to the ER a couple times. It was a little intense. Wow. It was one of those situations where I didn't know, like, you could become obsessed with it. So I didn't know how to cut it off. And so it was always running for that whole 10.5 week period. And so when we got to the bar, the first day was okay-ish. And then after the first day, I think I kind of like cracked, because it was like one of the, like, a mental breakdown, borderline release thing where I was like, but I had a whole nother day to go, like, to still take the test. So it was interesting. Unfortunately, I was not successful on that bar exam. So what I did, after talking with some of my best friends and my family, instead of taking the next exam, I took a year off and then took July of 2019. And it seemed to work halfway, because I did my bar prep, like, just a little modified, just on my own. I used my free retake you get with the commercial programs or whatnot, and then I modified it. I refused to follow everything to the letter, because we were not going back down that road. And I was successful on half of the bar. I had passed the Florida portion, and then, but I fell short 2.5 points of the MBE portion. And so, oddly enough, I was okay. I was like, okay, well, now all I gotta do is take MBE and be done. And so I want to say February 2020 was my first time taking just the MBE. And that was interesting, to say the least. Not only taking just one day of the exam as opposed to being used to taking 2 days of the exam, but it's completely different. The atmosphere, what you study, it's a whole different just attack. Then, and I wasn't successful on that exam. Then we had, of course, COVID and all the shenanigans that went on with the, what I like to call the Corona Bar 2020.
Yeah.
And that was when they flipped it on us. And instead of me studying for MBE like I had already been studying for, then they flipped it to just Florida. And so that was a whole nother situation. Thankfully, the bar prep program that I had used was very accommodating and very helpful, not only with the material, but also mentally and spiritually. And so, fast forward, I want to say, what year are we in? 2021. So 2021, I wanted to, in my brain, I wanted to take a break because I decided to change jobs. I went from being a teacher to coming back to the state attorney's office as a legal assistant. And when I came back to the state attorney's office, I was happy to be back because I love it here. This is where I did my internship while I was in law school. I used my CLI. I worked here as OPS after graduation, all that. This is basically like home for me. And so I was excited to be back. Not gonna lie, I didn't really study and take the test serious that year, but I did take it because the Florida Bar gives you 25 months before your scores expire. Mm-hmm. And so fast forward to last year, February 2022, that was the year that everything kind of came back. I was a little bit upset at first because my score had expired and I had to take the whole test again. But it turned out to be a blessing in disguise because I was successful on that exam. That was the 7th exam that I had taken. So yeah, I took the bar a total of 7 times and I passed on the 7th try. And then you think once you pass the bar, once you get results, you're like, oh yay, everything's good. But the bar was like, hold up, wait a minute, just kidding. So I ended up having to retake the MPRE exam because those scores also expired.
Wow.
And so then I took the MPRE because they didn't tell me I needed to retake it until after the March test had already come and gone. So I registered for the August one. So here I am, finding out I passed the test, working technically in the office I always wanted to work in, and then they're like, wait, hold on, not yet. And so it was a little frustrating at first, but it kind of worked out basically because then the office moved me to paralegal in juvenile, and that's where I got to meet you guys and have some fun and kind of learn the job before having to do it. And then in September, I was finally sworn in as a member of the Florida Bar and an assistant state attorney.
Wow. That's not a story of persistence. How did you... Yes, 7 times. I've known people who've taken it twice, who've taken it 3 times and decided that, this is not worth the journey. This is not worth me doing again. But the fact that despite what happened, you did 7 times, that is a journey of persistence. And you deserve every moment to be an attorney right now. Like, your moment to be that. to be in the role that you are now. So after, you take the bar exam, after you passed, you mentioned it briefly about working as a legal assistant in the state attorney's office, and then you were a paralegal. But what originally inspired you to go into criminal law?
Honestly, there are 3 people because I never wanted to do criminal law, like ever. And so when I did my internship here, at first I did a volunteer internship, and then I later did a certified legal internship where you talk on the record and everything. So between my, technically 4 people, one was another student. Anya Henry is the one who convinced me to fill out the application, even though she convinced me in the most sneaky way possible. I'm glad I did. And then now she's the bureau chief, Renee Maradi here, as well as former assistant state attorney Brandon Moultrie, and Kaylee DeRico, who is the deputy chief now of county court. So those were my people who basically made it possible for me to be here. And then I didn't think it would be something that I would want to do. I didn't think talking on the record or arguing cases was my thing, but I don't think I could do anything else.
That's pretty cool that you were willing to try a new experience, and as a result of your willingness to try is where you now found your passion as the law that you're practicing. So what advice would you give to new and future law students?
What advice would I give to new and future law students? The first bit of advice I would say would be to do it scared. I'm not gonna lie, I was terrified. I didn't know anybody. I talked to strangers all the time, which is dangerous nowadays, but I'm not gonna lie. When I first moved here, I was naive and very young, and a lot of things I had to do, I'm afraid. Don't be afraid to ask the questions. That was one of the things that my former professor turned dean, Karen Foltz, used to, her class taught me. Everyone was terrified of her class. And so I made it my mission to raise my hand every time she asked a question, even if it was wrong. And then eventually, when I finally started getting things right, she knew I had gotten it. Like, I understood, and it was a point, and she knew I wasn't afraid anymore. So, sadly, she stopped calling on me for a while. But it was one of those things, like, she was like, you're going to keep raising your hand, whether you get it right or wrong, until you get something right. And I was like, yeah, I am. And so people in your classes are learning too. They might act like they know it, but they don't. Nobody knows anything in the class. That's why you're in the class. Raise your hand. Be happy to get stuff wrong, because when you get it wrong, you can figure it out how to get it right the next time.
Mm-hmm.
And then the next thing I guess I would have to give them would be, don't give up. I guess, you gotta keep trying. Sometimes, sometimes you hear a no for a reason, and then later on you hear a yes, and it's like, that's your yes. I believe in God, but not saying that you have to believe in God to go to law school, but it's one of those situations where if it's for you, it'll happen. It might not happen, and I struggle with being patient. It might not happen when you want it to happen, but eventually it will happen. And so once it does, you just gotta go for it, whether you're afraid or whether you know what you're doing, because there's been a lot of times where I'll just be faking it till I make it. And you know what? I got a few people be like, wait, y'all still got a job today? Nobody get, we all right? Building still standing, And then just keep doing it. You'll learn how to do it correctly eventually.
Yeah, that is true. I feel like the whole process of law school, the bar exam, even working as an attorney, there's so many points that you can. This is not everybody's journey, but for a lot of us, we have to be persistent. We have to carry the mindset of not giving up and be willing to just learn. As you said, be willing to be scared and willing to keep going despite being scared, because even as an attorney, there are so many times I'm having, and especially in the beginning of practicing as an attorney, where you go before a judge and you're scared. You don't. This is your first time litigating a case. This is the first time before a jury. This is the first time before a judge that you're presenting a specific type of case, and you're nervous and you're scared. And in that moment, you have to choose to just pursue and to do your job as an attorney despite how you feel. So I feel like in this field, we are constantly facing challenges where we have to keep going.
Absolutely.
Okay, this is the last question. So what is something that people will be surprised to learn about you?
I don't know. I don't consider myself a very surprising person, but a few people would beg to differ, I guess. I don't know. I feel like I either know a lot of useless, or what I used to call useless information or random facts, or I know how to do things when it comes to like whether it's home improvement tasks. I did build the engine with my dad, and the engine does run. He likes to restore like old cars. He has an old car that we used to tinker with together, and I helped him, work on that. I know a lot more about cars, I guess, than I should probably know. I mean, I don't know. I just know how to do a few random things, and you never know when they're going to come in handy. I keep a drill in my office.
You sound like you're always prepared. Even when I was working with you were always prepared.
But it's not even for like law or work related things. I'm just prepared for random stuff.
But I do want to thank you for coming. Thank you for your time. Thank you for taking the time to talk to our listeners. I really appreciate you doing so, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you. I really did have a good time, and I hope I get to come back.
Thanks for tuning in to another great episode of Journey to Esquire, the podcast. Support, share, subscribe. And for more, visit www.journeytoesquire.com.